Ever feel like humanity is just one natural disaster away from just total meltdown?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, get ready to dive into John Wyndham's The Day of the Triffids, because today we're exploring what happens when the lights go out permanently.
And not just any blackout, right? I mean, Wyndham, he really throws humanity a curveball with this one.
Oh, yeah.
You're probably thinking, okay, meteor shower, sounds pretty, what's the big deal?
Right, like fireworks, beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. But Wyndham, he masterfully flips that expectation on its head, doesn't he?
It's insidious.
Yeah.
This meteor shower, this celestial spectacle that everyone's captivated by, it's the very thing that blinds them.
It's like staring at the most beautiful aurora borealis, completely unaware that it's about to steal your sight.
Exactly. And suddenly something as simple as sight, a sense we completely take for granted, becomes this horrifying vulnerability.
And Wyndham, he really makes you feel the immediacy of the chaos, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
The screeching brakes, the panic screams, people stumbling blindly through a world they no longer recognize. It's like the very fabric of society unravels before your eyes. Or, I guess, behind them in this case.
And it's a brilliant commentary on how fragile our systems really are.
Absolutely.
Those intricate networks that keep society functioning. Food delivery, clean water, electricity. I mean, everything we rely on just vanishes in an instant.
And as those systems crumble, I mean, that's when we start to see those darker aspects of human nature begin to emerge.
We were talking earlier about how Wyndham, he doesn't just tell us about the desperation, he really shows it.
Yeah.
What were those lines about, people preying on the vulnerable?
Blind leading the blind, and both of them falling into the ditch. Wyndham uses that proverb to really highlight that lawlessness that erupts. He paints a very visceral picture of individuals driven to desperate measures, exploiting the newly blinded just for their own survival.
So it's a question, is it the catastrophe itself that's terrifying, or is it what it unleashes within us?
Right. What is it about these events?
Yeah, it's like even in the face of this global crisis, those existing power structures, those hierarchies, they find a way to reassert themselves, often in even more brutal ways.
Precisely. And that's where the Triffids, these peculiar, mobile, carnivorous plants, really come into play. Initially, they were just an oddity, remember?
Right.
People compared them to kangaroos or giant lizards. It was unsettling, but ultimately, fascinating.
It's that unsettling feeling you get when you see like a Venus flytrap for the first time.
Right.
Fascinating, but you definitely don't want to get too close.
Exactly. But little did they know, right?
Little did they know.
This global blindness, this transforms the Triffids from a mere curiosity into a terrifying threat. And suddenly their venomous sting one touch is enough to kill, and their unsettling ability to thrive in this new world becomes a terrifying reality.
I'm imagining these massive plants, they're pattering, echoing through the darkness, closing in on these unsuspecting survivors. It's like they were lying in wait, just waiting for their moment to strike.
And it taps into that primal fear, doesn't it? This idea of being hunted by something you can't even see.
Oh, talk about a nightmare scenario.
Yeah.
So we've got this backdrop of societal collapse, this creeping dread of the Triffids, and then we're introduced to our protagonist, Bill Masen.
Bill, one of the few who can still see, becomes our eyes into this transformed world. He witnesses both the best and the worst of humanity as he navigates this desolate labyrinth of fear and desperation that London has become.
And he encounters Josella Playton, she's a force to be reckoned with. You mentioned their first meeting was less than idyllic. Can you tell me more about that?
Picture this. Bill, making his way through a deserted London, stumbles upon a scene that even in this new reality is shocking. Josella, a young woman with her sight intact, is held captive by a blind man.
Now that's a terrifying introduction. I'm on the edge of my seat already.
And it really sets the tone for the dangers of this new world, especially for women. But even in that moment of vulnerability, Josella's strength and resourcefulness are evident. Remember how she engineers their escape during a brawl.
Talk about quick thinking. She's certainly no damsel in distress. It makes you wonder, what would your first move be in a world suddenly plunged into darkness? What skills would you wish you had?
That's the brilliance of Wyndham's writing, isn't it? He forces us to confront those uncomfortable questions, to imagine ourselves in this terrifying yet strangely believable scenario.
So we have Bill and Josella, thrown together by circumstance, trying to navigate this world that's been completely upended. And it really makes you think about what kind of society would emerge from such chaos. Would we cling to what we know, what's familiar, or would we try to forge a completely new path?
And that's precisely what Wyndham explores through those different factions that Bill and Josella encounter. Each group represents a different vision for the future, a different attempt to rebuild order from the ashes.
It's like watching this social experiment unfold, but in the midst of an apocalypse, you have this blank slate, and everyone's grappling with how to fill the void. What were some of the approaches that Wyndham presented?
One that really stands out is this group that's led by a sociologist, and he advocates for a very rigid, almost biblical social structure.
What?
Men are relegated to manual labor while women are expected to repopulate the earth, bearing child after child.
Hmm. So return to like traditional gender roles, even in this post-apocalyptic world. That's bound to. I mean, that's going to stir up some controversy, even now. Do you think Wyndham was endorsing this worldview, or was he trying to like critique something about human nature?
That's the beauty of his writing, right? He doesn't give us those easy answers. He presents us with this stark scenario and kind of forces us to grapple with the implications. Is this rigid hierarchy truly necessary for survival, or is it just a way for old power structures to reassert themselves? And and it's interesting to consider, especially in light of everything we were just discussing about vulnerability and exploitation.
And it makes you wonder, even if this group believes they're acting in the best interests of humanity, what happens to individual freedom? What about the people who don't fit into those predefined roles?
Exactly. And that's where we see Bill and Rosella pulling away from this faction. They recognize the inherent inequality of the system and are drawn instead to this smaller, more egalitarian community.
So they choose collaboration over coercion. Tell me more about this group. Who leads it? What are their values?
This group is led by Bill's friend, Michael Beadley, and it's comprised mainly of sighted individuals. Each brings their own unique skills and knowledge to this collective effort of survival. They understand that in this new world, cooperation isn't just idealistic, it's essential for survival.
Strength in numbers, right? They recognize that their individual survival is completely linked to the well-being of the group as a whole.
Absolutely. They work together to secure resources, establish some semblance of order, and find a safe haven away from the dangers of London. And you can really feel this palpable sense of hope emerging from their collective efforts. It's a powerful reminder that even in the darkest of times, human connection can be a lifeline.
It's interesting, though, how even as they're building this new society, this new sense of normalcy, Wyndham never lets us forget about the looming threat of the Triffids.
Always there.
They're always lurking in the background, like a constant reminder of the fragility of everything,
Right, like a constant reminder.
of their efforts. Yeah,
And this is where Bill's friend Walter, the Triffid expert, really enters the picture. Remember those unsettling theories that he had about the Triffids?
right.
They start to take on a new significance as the story unfolds.
Yes. It's like that moment in a horror movie when the creepy music starts playing and you just know something bad is about to happen. What was it Walter believed again?
He was convinced that the Triffids were far more intelligent than anyone realized, that their pattering, that rhythmic rattling sound they make, was actually some form of communication. He even went so far as to suggest that they might be coordinating their attacks.
Wait, coordinated attacks?
Mhm.
You're saying intelligent plants plotting against humanity. That takes the fear factor to a whole other level. Did Bill believe him?
Initially, Bill was skeptical, but as he witnesses the Triffids' behavior, their uncanny ability to exploit the situation, their rapid spread, and their increasingly bold attacks, Walter's theories start to seem less and less far-fetched.
So instead of just mindless plants reacting to their environment, there's this suggestion of something much more sinister, more calculated, lurking beneath the surface. I'm getting chills just thinking about it.
And that's precisely what makes Wyndham such a master of suspense. He plants this seed of doubt, this unsettling possibility that grows alongside the Triffids themselves.
And just when you thought things couldn't get any more complicated, we're introduced to a new generation. Children born into this altered world. They have no memory of the world before, the world where sight was the norm.
Right, this completely alien concept to them. The arrival of these children, it introduces a whole new dimension to the story. It raises these questions about how we as humans preserve knowledge, how we rebuild civilization, and ultimately what we choose to pass on to those who come after us.
So it's like starting from scratch, but with this added burden of protecting these children from this this ever-present danger. What did you make of Josella's idea to create this new cosmology for the children?
That's one of the most fascinating aspects of the book, isn't it? This idea that we have a responsibility not just to protect, but also to shape the narratives of those who come after us. It's not just about explaining the past, it's about shaping their understanding of the present danger. They have to instill a healthy fear of the Triffids in these children who have never known a world without them.
Right, right. It makes you think about the stories we tell ourselves,
Yeah.
both in times of crisis and in times of relative peace. What do we choose to emphasize? What do we omit? And how do those choices end up shaping the way we see the world and our place in it? But even with the best of intentions, I mean, rebuilding a society from scratch, that's no easy feat. What were some of the specific challenges that Wyndham highlighted in those later chapters?
Well, it's this constant battle on multiple fronts. They're contending with the elements, scavenging for dwindling resources, all while trying to just, stay one step ahead of the Triffids. And then, as if that weren't enough, there's this constant tension between individual survival and the desire for a functioning community.
It's that age-old dilemma, isn't it? Like, do
Right.
we prioritize our own needs, our own survival, or the needs of the many? And Wyndham, he doesn't shy away from showing us how easily that line can be blurred, especially when survival is at stake.
Exactly. Remember Bill's harrowing encounter with that group that was led by Coker?
Oh yeah.
That whole episode really highlights the darker side of human nature that can emerge in those really desperate times.
That was a chilling part of the book. The way they were exploiting the blind, treating them as little more than slaves. It really makes you question if there were any lines they wouldn't cross.
It's this stark reminder that even in the face of a common enemy, even with the best intentions, I mean, we're all capable of perpetuating that harm. And Bill's decision to escape that group, to risk his own safety just for the sake of his values, that speaks to the enduring power of individual conscience, even amidst all the chaos.
It's a testament to the idea that we don't have to abandon our humanity, even in the most inhumane of circumstances. But as we kind of move toward the end of the book, there's this sense of urgency, this need to find a more permanent solution to this Triffid problem. And that's where the idea of reservations comes into play, right?
Exactly. These protected communities are designed to shield the sighted from the Triffids, right?
Right.
And they represent a kind of uneasy truce in this ongoing battle for dominance. And they've developed strategies for managing the threat. They're even using the Triffids as a source of food and fuel. But it comes at a cost, doesn't it?
It feels like such a tenuous existence, living behind those walls, always on guard. Is that really sustainable long term?
And that's the question Wyndham leaves us with, right? As Bill reaches one of these reservations, even as they seem to be, carving out this semblance of normalcy, there's this lingering sense of unease. Remember those final lines about the true nature of the meteor shower?
That was a real gut punch. It wasn't just some random cosmic event, but a deliberate act. It was potentially orchestrated by a rival nation.
Yeah.
And the idea that humanity brought this on itself, that we created the conditions for our own downfall. I mean, that adds a whole other layer of complexity to the story.
And it forces us to re-examine everything we thought we knew about the nature of the threat. Are the Triffids the real enemy here, or are they simply a symptom of a much deeper, more insidious problem?
It's like realizing the monster you've been fighting this whole time. It wasn't just this mindless force of nature, but a calculated creation, like a reflection of our own capacity for destruction.
And that's the brilliance of The Day of the Triffids, right? It's not just a thrilling post-apocalyptic adventure. It's a cautionary tale about the fragility of human civilization, the dangers of scientific hubris, and the enduring power of human nature, for good and for ill.
It's a story that really stays with you long after you finish reading it, leaving you with more questions than answers.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with this provocative thought. What would you do if you suddenly found yourself in Bill Masen's shoes? How would you navigate this world that's been plunged into darkness? It's teeming with danger, grappling with the very question of what it means to be human.
What skills would you draw on?
Yeah, what choices would you make?
Right, and most importantly, what kind of future would you strive to create?
We'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share your reflections with us on social media. Until next time, Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.